Hello everyone, and welcome to the Mega Magikarp YouTube channel. I'm Magikarp, and today we're finishing off the roll guides for the Dawning with the Cold Front SMG, a 750 round per minute kinetic aggressive frame submachine gun, which has a little bit of a wild ride going on with its perk pool over its last few days, which is why I held off on making this video for a while. And while I'll briefly go over that in the perk review section and a bit on my thoughts, I'm going to keep my main opinions to myself till I can get a video out on my thoughts on the matter. Today's all factual and guide-based statistical info, but before we dig into the nitty-gritty details of what you should want on this weapon, a super quick reminder: if you enjoy the video and you want to see more like it, it would be fantastic if you could hit the subscribe button, help the channel reach its first milestone of 1,000 subs. It'll be the first major stepping stone for making YouTube guys for the future. So let's talk about Cold Front, starting with what I think really needs to be talked about: its base stats and its competition. It doesn't have any true one-to-one comparison since it's the only legendary kinetic aggressive frame 750 round per minute SMG that's currently available within the legendary perk pool. So we'll compare it to both the Friction Fire, which is a 600 round per minute precision frame, and the Ikelos SMG, which is an energy 750 round per minute SMG. The Cold Front is significantly statistically worse than the Ikelos in every category: 8 less range, 15 less handling, 5 less reload, 13 less aim assist, 3 less magazine, and 23 less stability. That last one in particular I feel is a huge one. That loss of stability is something you can really feel when using the weapon. The ability to use it at range with so much less range and aim assist is already noticeable, but you need a full stability masterwork, chambered compensator, and either tac mag or flared magwell just to reach the base stability of the Ikelos SMG. It really feels like it was intentionally cut short for stats for what I can only assume is Bungie's fear of making SMGs too good. Someone clearly didn't like how Antia PD was the king of the castle in the early days of vanilla Destiny 2. And this isn't even touching on perks available to the Ikelos or Warmind cell capacity that it has. This is purely on the base stats. The other comparable kinetic SMG, Friction Fire, again has much higher base stats, alongside better recoil control and a slower rate of fire, but the perk selection is slightly higher tier in my opinion. It has access to Threat Detector, which is my personal pick for best perk for SMGs, and Cold Front, between both the current iteration of perks and its old one, never had access to that perk anywhere. So it's really just a matter of this. I would say of the 3 Dawning weapons available, there's very specific roles that make it worth using at all, and feels prerequisite on the barrels, magazines, and masterworks to make it happen rather than the main perks. Just the base stats are so low, you have to capitalize on what makes this weapon even salvageable. Go after the other 2 event weapons first and hope to stumble upon a good roll of this sometime along the way, otherwise I just think it's not worth the effort. With that little rant out of the way, we'll start with the column 4. We're gonna work our way backwards, partly because the barrels and the mag perks are going to be, frankly, rather set in stone. Because even if you're a keyboard and mouse player where the lack of stability is going to be less impactful to you, I just feel like there's only so much that you can do with this weapon's base stats to where you still have to capitalize on them. Without working on those base stats at all, you're going to be left with a subpar weapon, so even with the recoil control pattern as less of a concern for you, it's still going to be rather uninteresting to talk about which barrels and magazine perks that you want, because it's just so very specific to this weapon. Also, we're starting with column 4 because of the elephant in the room, which is Dragonfly. My opinion video will be out soon following this, but I'm going to be in general assuming that this perk will be removed. They've not addressed that yet as of the recording of this video, but we have historical precedents for that to be Bungie's method, as when they deleted Shot Package from Destiny 1, every shotgun that had that perk removed, so we'll see what happens. Unrelenting. Still bugged. I'm higher for this for special or heavy weapons mostly. I just feel like it's okay here, but I'm not actively looking for it. It feels thoroughly mediocre here, especially with its small mag size. Thresh, on the other hand, is a perk that I'm never going to be sad to see in PvE. Adds extra super energy to your super meter with each kill. And while I don't have the mathematical data on the exact percentage it puts to your super meter, it does have the same effect on primaries and specials that Demolitionist does, where special weapons get more of the benefit than primaries do. That doesn't mean it's bad here, it'll still do work. One for All is a perk that I really want to enjoy, especially for the My Hero Academia reference. Hitting 3 separate targets gives you a 10-second buff to damage. It's comparable to a 3x stack of Rampage, but I don't think this weapon really works with it well. It takes a bit too much of the pitifully small magazine and too much time searching for enemies to really make it work, especially since it can't refresh the perk very easily. For perks that actually help the weapon perform, Rampage and Surrounded are your best bet, but I think, as boring as it is, I have to give it to Rampage, since Surrounded's best friend Threat Detector isn't here to back it up. Rampage is one of my least favorite perks in the game, but it's here and this gun can take all the help that it can get, so I'm not really overly upset that it's available on this weapon, since, frankly, this one needs the help. Moving on to column 3, if you have any intention of using this weapon in PvP, there's only really one perk that can salvage it from mediocrity, and that's Surplus, where stability, handling, and reload are buffed for each charged ability that you have. This is the only perk that makes it remotely possible to contend with in PvP. The stability bonuses are impossible to understate here. The other two stats being buffed are almost as important for Crucible to maintain uptime with a faster reload and being able to swap to your other weapons and have faster ADS time with the handling. But the stability is the biggest thing here. I tried both under pressure and dynamic sway reduction on the weapon, and the differences in the ability to control the recoil are just night and day. The stability bonus from Surplus is infinitely better than those two for this particular weapon. Dynamic sway is definitely a better perk on auto rifles than this SMG. In almost every other situation, I feel like Surplus is so mandatory on this weapon that the only other perk I would even consider on this weapon is Subsistence, which, when combined with Rampage, gives you a poor man's Huckleberry. And if you really want to run this weapon as a discount exotic, then by all means I won't stop you, but if you have a spare exotic slot open in your arsenal, Huckleberry will walk all over this weapon. That's not really saying anything in particular about this weapon, even if it's slightly on the weaker side. That's just how powerful Huckleberry is. Quick draw is on this column as well, but if I'm being honest, Surplus fills this perk's role a lot better, just because of how poor the base stats are on this. Surplus, by happenstance, takes the cake on the stats that really needs to be taken care of on this weapon, so Quick Draw's effects are effectively second rate to Surplus on this exact weapon. Some weapons can get away with only running Quick Draw. Off the top of my head, the Crucible Pulse Rifle is a very good example of this, where the extra stability bonuses are nice, but not especially mandatory, and you can get away with just using Quick Draw. Cold Front is not that weapon. Cold Front needs the extra help. For the magazine options, I'm going to keep it short and simple. The only perks I'm looking at even remotely closely are Tactical Mag, Flared Magwell, and especially Steady Rounds. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but legitimately, this weapon needs the stability. You don't need to add accurized rounds to this weapon because you're already going to have to get close with this SMG anyway, and the base stats are just so low everywhere, you may as well make this weapon easier to use. Lastly, in the barrels, Chambered Compensator and Polygonal Rifling are my two biggest picks. Chambered a tiny bit higher since the handling hit is worth the 100 perfect recoil direction, and Small Bore is a decent second pick since the extra range it provides does actually translate to an additional meter in actual in-game range, which for only 6 additional range is very solid. I'm still going to prioritize Chambered Compensator and Polygonal over it, but if a roll that I happen to get does have everything else that I'm looking for in this weapon and I get Small Bore, I'm not going to complain. For the Masterwork, do I really need to say it? Do I really need to say? I don't think I need to say which Masterwork I'm going for here. So let's go over this whole thing and how the stats actually line up with how we play with it, because it's easy to say what this weapon would benefit the most from with having all the best stability perks in the game, but realistically, let's try a modest example, because we can't pick and choose which perks we get on our weapons. We can only really pick from what we get to drop from to begin with. So we'll try a modest example. Corkscrew Rifling, Tactical Mag, Surplus, and a secondary perk of your choosing. Let's assume for PvE's sake that we go with Thresh. If this weapon rolled a Stability Masterwork, this is about the point at which I would consider the weapon to be good enough. Like, I would be okay with masterworking this particular one. I don't think that going after the ultimate god roll of the weapon is really going to make the hugest difference in the world here, but this is certainly good enough. The god roll for this weapon is more likely to be Chambered Compensator and Steady Rounds with the Stability Masterwork, with Surplus and Rampage or Thresh as my main perks, and the possibility of Subsistence instead of Surplus if I get Rampage along with it, but only if I get the quintessential god perk stability perks. I really want to state this though. This weapon will probably not be a mainstay of your loadout, and I'm honestly fairly disappointed in just how weak this weapon is, just because how they slash the stats with nothing really to make it stand out. That standout feature that they could have added to this weapon is going to be my next video discussion, but that's for another time. If you do really enjoy the weapon, I say try to go for the rolls of which I suggested here. I don't expect this one to be a mainstay of the Crucible or people to be crushing Grandmaster Nightfalls with this weapon, which is unfortunate because I really do enjoy the Haka design weapons, but that's just how the cookie crumbles on this one. Hey, that's a pun. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below and ring the bell for notifications on new videos. And if you want to see more, be sure to click on the videos on screen. And if you really want to help me out, consider joining me on my Patreon. Every little bit helps to keep my videos going and keep my lights on. We'll see you on the next video.